Item A4, approval of minutes for June 13th, 2024. Is there a motion to approve these minutes?
So moved.
Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Minutes are approved. Item B1, the information item with possible action for facilities strategic plan draft timeline and amendments. We have one public comment from Tony Ball.
Hey guys. I just want to share one concern I had in that despite the numerous calls of the board members to add a decarbonization list, project list for decarbonizing buildings at PCC, as well as the calls made by students for at least 2 semesters now. The latest FNP update does not include any detailed plan for a project list of decarbonizing buildings, and neither does it include anything about its cost figures. And while it does include a recommendation about the decarbonization of buildings, I don't think that's needed right now because it's the majority of the board already made comments supporting the idea of decarbonizing buildings itself. So we don't need a recommendation, but we need an actual detailed plan for decarbonizing the buildings of PCC, while also having its cost figures introduced as well. So what I hope for is for the facilities master plan update for it to be approved at a later date until there is a plan included that includes the decarbonization of buildings, as well as its cost figures, and hopefully by then it could be approved by the board of trustees. And I understand that there are calls for the FMP to be passed as soon as possible for the projects to go forward, but the resolution for decarbonization itself is already on a timer and that it's set for 2030 to be completed. And I think that the next best chance for actually including the decarbonization of buildings will be by 2029. So I do think that it's the best time right now to include a decarbonization of buildings and a detailed plan for it in this facilities master plan update. I hope that you guys understand my concern. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public comment on this agenda item. Vice President Jones.
Thank you. Welcome everyone. All right, we are going to give, tonight's plan is to give the subcommittee an update related to the 4 items that we shared at the last board meeting as the next steps for this process. And so, as you're all aware, we already have an approved facilities strategic plan, which was approved in 2020. And this, at our last board meeting, there was a consensus to approve the 4 amendments to the plan. And so we wanted to walk through that. One of the asks was to verify the timeline and some of the cost estimates that we had done originally, as well as then give some guidance related to what happens next. There's a lot of work that happens next. So I've got our partners here from HGA and myself will kind of walk through those pieces with you all today and some of the rationale around the timing and where things fit on the plan, and then open up for any questions for you all. So our agenda is to just talk about, actually Joe's going to cover the projected schedule and sequencing, which then feeds into the cost models. We then took all of the information that we presented to the Board of Trustees at our last board meeting in June and updated the updated document for you all. And then we wanted to give you a little bit of an overview about the sequel process that will happen next. So Joe, if you want to go to the projected.
So what we did, as Candace mentioned, we, I think at the last month's board meeting, we presented a abbreviated timeline of projects, and we were asked to look at it more closely, and we added more detail in here as well. So you could see in the legend we included some steps for what we call PCC preparation, and in general that is for the college to get things in order, geotechnical reports, surveys, things that will be necessary for the subsequent work, the projects that will be executed. Then there is also identified programming procurement phase, and that was in general for most of the projects, since they are large in size, we allowed 9 months for that to occur. And what that will be is to set forth what is actually going to be the spaces inside the buildings and do the programming of that. And then also we'll prepare for the procurement, whether depending on delivery method, to allow time for that to occur and get arranged. Then there is design phases identified in the yellow color, and that varies depending on the size of the projects, but we gave our professional judgment on how long those durations would take place. And then allowance for approval, time for approvals. That obviously is supposed to be concerned with Division of State Architect approvals. Again, depending on the magnitude of the size of the projects, that shows different durations there. And then construction phases shown in the red color. And overall, I think what we attempted to do is stagger the projects a little bit, so there wouldn't be a lot of disruption, but they would be released slowly, and it would all sort of hit at the same time. If you notice in the timelines at the top, 2024, where we are now, beginning of 2025, we're expecting, although not necessarily part of the Measure PCC or the Facility Strategic Plan covers, but completion of some of the projects that are already underway. Most of 2025 will be in sort of that planning preparation stages, and in 2026 is when activity will actually start to happen. We have some diagrams to share to kind of show the sequence of how that will evolve. Next slide. Okay, so as I said, 2025, Miracles and Sexton Auditorium are anticipated to be completed, as well as Seraphim building. In 2026, we start to see demolition of the W building and starting construction on both the Aquatic Center and Lancers Pass, as well as the improvements to parking lot 5, which is the photovoltaic panels, would start to occur there. Moving to the third sequence in 2027, Lancers Pass and the Aquatic Center complete, and you can see the emergence of the swing space that will allow for demolition of the L building. That's identified in red there. The PVs on Lot 5 anticipated to be completed at this time. Annex building will start to be demobilized and removed. Health Sciences will start to see activity on that site, as well as Galloway Plaza Cafe, and the efforts for the PVs moving to the northwest corner in Lot 1 will start to take shape there, so that will start to get in the fourth sequence in 2028, we start to see Lot 1 that I just mentioned is completed. Also within that year, Lot 3 will be completed. Then we'll start to see the boiler house activity happening, as well as the annex building, construction to occur there. Health Sciences will remain under construction in this year, as well as the new student services building will begin construction during this time. Year 5, we start seeing completion of projects. Trying to see there is completion of most projects, including the LL building and the GM building as well. And then in year 6, I think the last sequence was completion of the L building. Our supplemental document always does a better description of all this rather than my verbal description here. But that's essentially the sequence of the projects in the
I want to hear some more about DSA. I don't know much about approval process. A little bit about timeline and process
Sure.
of DSA.
So significant projects such as health sciences or student service.
DSA stands for, just for the folks that are.
Division of State Architect. And they are essentially the regulatory agency, the authority having jurisdiction over the college. The timeline for larger projects recently executed or completed VSA approval on a major project in about 9 months. So that's kind of the timeline that we're looking at. If projects are smaller, it could be less time, and I think we try to reflect that in the schedule that we put together. Some projects were showing 6 months completion. Some could be as short as a 3-month duration. I think we might have shown the swing space approval in that shorter time frame because it's assumed that the modular buildings that will be used are what they call PCs or pre-checked buildings, so they don't go through a full analysis. So it kind of depends on the realm of the projects. Overall, it's recommended that all projects go through DSA, even though they may not necessarily need to.
Yeah, we're gonna ask like demolition, does demolition need to be?
So if a project is being, if a building is being demolished in its entirety, it does not necessarily need to be reviewed by DSA. They're more concerned when you do partial demolition, that part of the structure is going to remain, that it's safe, even for construction workers and such, that it remains safe in the interim. But it's not necessarily needed to do that. But I will say with demolition of, for example, the W building, there is, it's our understanding that there's a lot of utilities that are running through that building that need to be rerouted before the building can be demolished. And with those utilities rerouting, it may affect the perimeter. The DSA may be interested in reviewing for accessibility in terms of temporary path of travel around the site and such. And forgive me, I didn't mention that Division of State Architect generally is looking at 3 realms. They look at structural safety, they look at fire and life safety, and they look at accessibility also. So those are the kind of the 3 categories that they look at. So depending on the scope of the project, it may not necessarily have a structural review, but it may have an accessibility review. It could also be different, perhaps there's no fire life safety review, but it's required to have structural accessibility. So the architect of record generally for those projects will identify what is the necessary reviews that are required upon application of these.
Thank you.
One thing I was just going to share that is in addition to what we're seeing in terms of the sequencing pieces, this is really focused on the Colorado campus, but one of the projects that you saw in the previous slide, which is to really start very quickly the Rosemead project. And so what that brings for the college, the intentionality around having that be one of the really first pieces is one, it gives the opportunity for the college as a whole to participate in these types of construction activities. This is going to be very new for many folks here, and just in terms of what does design process look like. How do we go back? How do we work with the Division of State Architect? How do we do the programming conversations? And since that actually pulls on every area of the college, it gets us a really great opportunity for everyone to sort of be on board, or at least learn about how these construction projects will go. Also gives us a really great opportunity to make some good strides around sustainable energy and those pieces at Rosemead. I mean, it's a blank slate for us, and as we continue to build that through all of the projects on Measure PCC, that can become a very first immediate focus there as well. So as we're coming up into these conversations, Joe had really demonstrated how we're trying to take the photovoltaic pieces really early on in these projects for Colorado. But for Rosemead, that really becomes a central focus for us from the sustainability standpoint. So
Do you want me
to be like, surprise! Only in that our goal, maybe you can speak a little bit into in terms of the rigor that we go through in terms of producing estimates. But in each of these projects, it is very important that as we're building through, whether it's new construction or remodels or things like that, that we are weeding through a host of different considerations, compliance, or resolutions like the decarbonization or compliance issues that happen at the state, Division of State Architect, that all of those pieces get weaved into each of these line items in a way that allows us to continue to make forward progress on not only modernizing our buildings, but also constructing really state-of-the-art facilities. And so HGA has really worked diligently to kind of come back at this. We had sort of come up with some initial projections, but we wanted to make sure that as we're honing and thinking and zeroing in on what the cost models look like, we took another step back and attacked that. And so Joe's going to just talk a little bit more about sort of the thought process of these.
Right. So one of the big things that we went since the last presentation of this information was, now that we have a schedule and we kind of adjusted things, to relook at the escalation factors that we identified previously. So those got fine-tuned a little bit better. So obviously, the longer a project takes, or is in a timeline, it's assumed that it's going to cost more, right? Each year we're seeing escalation. It's kind of part of our normal economy that things cost more every year. People get paid more every year. So we did look closely at the timelines in comparison to the escalations that factors that we included. So these numbers have been refined here, and these numbers also represent what we refer to as a total project cost, which means that we have also included assumed soft costs for professional design fees, also for any staging or anything that needs to happen, and also FF&E, which is a big part of it, right? So you're going to have brand new facilities. The intention for our cost models are you're not going to be moving old furniture into the brand new, sparkling new buildings, right? There should be new furniture that is accommodated, and that'll be part of the design process too. And it may also include some new approaches to furnishing as well. Things such as perhaps shared offices rather than individual offices, or group work office stations, different kinds of furniture for instructional spaces, whether it be mobile tables and chairs, even mobile tablet armchairs, and then there's a whole technology overlay that is included in that as well, for all, especially for the learning environments. So we've accounted for that in these numbers as well. These numbers are budgetary, so it's assumed that as the projects evolve and start, that they will be looking more closely at costs particular to the projects. And if these are used as design to budget numbers, that we believe that these can be executed against. There may be savings overall for the college, and if there can be savings, it's thought of that either that will help generate other smaller projects on the campus, or the college has the ability to make some decisions with the budgets.
It just occurred to me, actually not building related, not construction related, but the cost of us getting the money in our hands. It occurs to me that that's another cost that is somewhere in the picture.
That's correct.
It occurred to me.
And gets reported out of the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee. So when we report out what's available for project funds, we have accounted for any of the underwriter costs or the costs of issuance in that piece, and then we will then designate what portion of funds are available for project.
What are, for the purposes of the full board on Wednesday, what are the biggest differences between this updated cost model in terms of each item, the project compared to the last one? Just to highlight for if people are looking at this compared to last meeting.
See, it's a little higher.
What number do you remember?
Well, it was less than 460. It was lower than 460 last time.
Is that true?
46.
Maybe like 480 something.
Yeah, I think
Oh,
it,
so
was-
good.
it increased by about 10.
Oh.
So I know we made some adjustments based on the power distribution center, which is a project that is connected to, will help to power the east side of campus. So it's right next to the Serafian building. It'll eventually also power the new health sciences building. So that piece, we had a lot of rich conversation around that. I feel like we also made some adjustments to the boiler house modernization based on square footage, and so I think those were the largest two, but we'll be sure to also be ready with that question if we just did a side-by-side comparison. But those are the two largest. Did you remember one other one?
I don't. I think the biggest thing was all the escalation in the numbers, the schedule, how it
Yeah.
impacted the cost overall. Is what I.
Also helped. But I think back to, we always had a little, we have a little, I don't want to say attorney language, but what are the terms and conditions at the little asterisks, just that our estimates, we really want to make sure that we have a budget that can support all of these projects. And so the team really did well to make sure that we're, have appropriate escalation in each one of these. But as projects, if they come under, all it does is release those funds back to the project fund pool, and then the group will come back, oh, okay, we have these additional funds available for additional projects on campus. And so we will report those out regularly to the Board of Trustees.
Well, still the one other question, the project costs, I assume, I mean, that's for taking into account the installation and all the planning and then furniture component. That of course includes, efforts to make these new buildings more sustainable, right?
Correct.
That's all within that.
Mhm.
Okay.
That is correct. Thank you.
So this was intended just to be any general questions based on the information since it was distributed. It's just a cue for us to ask if there are any questions on the update now that the document is printed and distributed. Was there anything
Was there any change in the language around sustainability, around energy use, that sort of thing?
No, I mean, we pulled, so in the portion of that document, I think it was important that we continue to reflect the board's commitment to the resolutions that have been passed, and so we wanted to make sure that that language carried into the facility strategic plan, so there have been no changes there. Everything that was presented at the Board of Trustees meeting on the June 18th meeting has now been formalized as additional content areas in this particular plan. So unless there's something that you've seen, but the goal was to have a whole section and to reincorporate the language of the commitment there.
Question about the projected schedule sequencing as well. I know it's estimated to be done by Q2 2030, it looks like. Is this taking into account any possible delays? Because I know some of the groupings are dependent on the prior grouping. Is that taken into account for this kind of projection, or?
Yeah, I mean, we've built in healthy, roomy timeline projections for us. Of course, anything could happen. We've tried to account for that as we're thinking through, okay, what's our normal division of state architect timelines, what sort of pieces, because in some cases we actually may go through those faster, more quickly than what has been projected, and so we've given ourselves a lot of wiggle room to make sure that we're adjusting. The goal for us will always be balancing the college's needs at any one time with, because there's normal business that's happening, so all the people who are participating who are gonna need to participate in the design processes also have normal work lives and things that are happening. And so we've been trying to be really intentional about how we sequence so that we're trying to make sure that we're engaging those individuals when they have focused activity time. So when you think about our and sciences building and or our new student services building, right? Or even New Rosemead, right? We're going to need a lot of input from the campus community to participate. That goes alongside of all of the professional service folks who comes in. It's not like those folks can operate or design buildings or have conversations without a lot of input from this community. But there's a balance there related to how much we can push on those folks in terms of saying, we need you for 10 hours a week. You know, that may not be reasonable. So we made sure that we built timelines that are, have some awareness that other college activity and business is happening alongside this visioning piece of what our new campus is going to look like.
How does Seraphian fit into this, if it does? Is it included in this? Is it?
So Seraphian, fortunately, was included it wasn't ever really a part of since it was a state-funded project, it is sort of operated outside of the facility. We talk about it in relationship to it, but the timelines there are they're not apples to apples, because we also intend to use different construction delivery methods for other construction projects that would be different than the way that
I
we
remember
did.
those. I remember that.
Yeah,
discussion.
so design build versus design bid build. And some of our estimates are reflecting, the cost estimates reflect also these new.
Are there any
delivery models.
other projects that come from the past that are ongoing now?
That come from the past, other than the ones that are currently in flight, which is Miracles and Saxon. Dr. Gomez, you were going to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to Trustee Gibson's earlier question about whether there were any changes related to sustainability. There aren't any changes. There is an amplification of sustainability in this update to align with the directive of the Board of Trustees and the community to enhance and be more thoughtful about addressing climate change in our facilities planning. So there's no, I think there's no change from the last board meeting, but there I think is a different, and I don't know if this is a scientific word, there's a different vibe from the 2020 plan.
Yes.
And so that vibe is incorporated into this update.
Yes.
And every one of those projects that you see is infused with the Board of Trustees decarbonization resolution, and also with our college and community commitment to addressing the threat of climate change.
A good example is the inclusion of the plant palette, the native species plant palette. So that's that kind of enhancement from where it was back in the 2020. That's now.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is the board will have to give direction by approving the sequencing so we can move forward on these projects, right? But this is not the end all be all for even the sustainability efforts, right?
We'll get to continue to report on those activities, not only to the campus community, but to our board.
Yeah, so I mean, I can get the logic on moving, but there'll still be opportunity for community members, right? And, the board and everyone to work together on further some of these goals.
That's correct.
If I could.
Please.
So to put it in lay terms, so this is the concept. When we actually get down to the design process, that's where these resolution will be given to the designers in addition to the requirements of Title 24 from DSA and Green Code. So all those things go into the recipe. You're just seeing the picture of the cake, right? but we'll get to those points, and like I said, the code drives us to be energy efficient, and with the resolution also, that will be part of the actual part of the recipe of building the KCAP.
Oh, I'm hungry.
So we wanted to talk a little bit about the CEQA process.
Yeah, so just to explain the purpose of CEQA, we just extracted this from
Which is, I'm sorry, California Environmental Quality Act.
Right? So we extracted these intentions from the state of California website. So they're just generally known, to inform potential environmental effects on proposed activities, identify ways that environmental damage can be avoided, prevent significant avoidable environmental damage, and disclose why a project, if approved, that was has significant environmental impacts cannot be mitigated. So all of these are kind of very high-level descriptions of what goes on, but some of the maybe more specific things that are looked at is traffic, air quality, those kinds of environmental effects with building new projects. So that is will be further studied. I believe the college has consultant identified to assist with this process.
Any other questions?
I think we asked all our questions during the presentation, so I think, yeah, we're good for now. And I'm sure the full board might have some questions.
Sure.
On Wednesday. All right, I think we're moving on from agenda B1 to agenda B2, facilities
Right.
construction.
Don't you want the?
I was gonna say that,
Oh,
but if you
go ahead.
wanna,
No, go ahead.
if you wouldn't mind, moving for approval for the board, a recommendation for the board to review.
Okay, yeah, so, recommend, a motion to recommend this plan to the full board for consideration. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, recommended to the full board for consideration on Wednesday. Agenda item B2, facilities construction update.
Yes, so I think Richard is, we've got Chris here as well. We always want to make sure that we're giving a monthly reports on not only the Serapian building, but also a host of different activities. So maybe if you want to just kind of walk through the high levels, I don't know that we have to read through each
No,
one,
yeah,
but
we'll hit the high points here. So Serapian, some exciting things are happening. The glazing starting to go in on multiple floors.
I know it's nice.
Yeah, starting to look like a building. We still have some challenges on the south elevation. There still is a construction man lift, and we're working through that process of getting the elevator, internal service elevator up and running so that we can remove that. So that's kind of a stumbling block to enclosing the building. We're still looking, we're working with the contractor continuously on challenges and the timeline. We have a series of meetings this week to discuss substantial completion and when the building will be turned over. We're still, they're running a December completion date, and we're trying to get improvement on that, just so we can get ready with programming at Bethany and get the building ready, open it for a spring programming in the structure. So that's what's going on. We should be getting to the point where we can do hard hat tours a little bit later this summer. I know everybody has asked, but we still have scaffolds up in the stairwells, and once we get the elevator up and running, then we can start talking about having those hard hat tours. And so there's the only other thing that I want to highlight is there's definitely some activity on the existing side of campus. We completed the controls project, and we're working on a tenant improvement project here inside the C building, which will give us some additional gender neutral restrooms and improve the working conditions of some of the offices. We recently completed the Octagon Gym, so now our student athletes can, they have the access to that outdoors, and they can run multiple sets through there, while instead of getting all clogged up on the internal weight room. And the big one that's going on is if you are here during the day, there's a lot of boom lifts, and we're doing the campus-wide exterior painting. That project is getting us ready so that we have a nice fresh coat paint, and are looking our best for the 100-year celebration. So that's kind of some of the high notes. We are in the middle of, you'll see, and it'll probably come up under contracts that are coming up. Beer pools and the Sexton Auditorium refresh are both projects that we want to award this summer, because we do have a very tight timeline, so those will be coming across for board approval to get those two projects ready for the 100-year celebration. And then we're also in the midst of getting ready for the next winter events. We've got a phase 2 roofing campus-wide, and also Science Village and the bungalows at CEC. We're doing some deferred maintenance roofing projects for those too. If there's any specific questions, there's a lot going on there, but
When does the fall semester start? When do classes start?
26th of August?
The 26th. So, I recall early last year that we were not confident that we would be able to program Serafian for the spring. So this is a real significant improvement in the timeline from some of the scenarios that we were facing possibly a year ago. When I first started, I think my first meeting, we you know, there were concerns about whether we could make it happen. So this is actually much better than what we expected.
I don't want to step on your optimism. We're going to cross our fingers, but I still think we're in a zone where we are moving in that direction, and we're moving with the contractor. We're having some discussions of what some additional resources or acceleration and schedule might look like to get them to a point where we can start moving furniture, FF&E, and people in there. I think in the next 60 days, I'll know for sure if we're going to make full spring programming. At a minimum, there would be some programs that could go into the building. Definitely health services could go in, the student health services. Definitely probably some staff offices will be finished out and will be ready to go. But as far as full programming and getting labs set up, I mean, there's a lot of moving parts once we get the building built to actually get everybody moved in there. And we lose the last week of December and the first week of January, pretty much the local area, because of the Rose Parade. So there's other external impacts that even if we're ready to work, that it's a challenging environment. That 2 to 3 week period at the end of the year and again, and it's just.
Well, thanks for stepping on my.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was worse. I think our intention over these next couple of weeks is really, we've got some meetings scheduled, not only this week but next week, to really, we've got to get to the finish line, and we are asserting that we've got to get to our finish line based on the timelines that we've already had some conversations for. And so our goal in this next couple of weeks is to really firm that up and figure out what then the escalation on the project, whether it's cost, whether it's time, whatever we need to do to make sure that we're open in time, that's our first priority. And then if that is not the case, our intention would be to make sure that our board is updated at our next board meeting, if we ran into any issues, just to give you an update as to what's going on, you know, from that standpoint. But we've got some work to do in these next couple weeks that are going to be pushing our partners pretty hard to get done in time, based on the timelines that we had agreed to when we met a few months ago. So, but more to come on that.
Well, fingers crossed.
Mhm,
And,
mhm.
continues
But
to go.
yes, it is better than
It's a
where
lot
we were when
better.
we first started.
Even the worst case scenario of like partial opening, we were,
Yeah,
you know, worried that we wouldn't even be able to do that.
for partial, yep. So we've got some work to do, but we've got the team here to get us there.
Thanks to everyone working facilities and slowly seeing what's happening. It's a lot of work. So congratulations and thank you again. Any other questions from Steve?
Yeah, thanks for the, the update. So obviously, everybody is on tenterhooks,
Mhm.
listening to everything that's going on with the planning and the revision. So thanks for giving us a detailed explanation.
Seeing nothing else on item B2, item B3, upcoming measure PCC contract.
So we always keep this on this agenda. We don't have any that are coming up to the next board meeting, but it's just a standing item so that we can have an opportunity to talk about them.
Great. Seeing nothing else on item B3, then item C1, meeting schedule, because trustee Chen wasn't here, we'll discuss offline findings for the next meeting. Item D1, proposed future agenda items. Any future proposed agenda items?
We have one that we'll bring to you, whether it's in the August or September timeline. We want to continue to make sure that our tool belt is full with our construction delivery methods, and so we may have one other that we're going to be coming to the board for, but I think the August, September timeline is fine for those conversations. And then also to just do a reiteration of what the existing approvals are, so that as we're thinking through and getting into the planning process for, let's say, Rosemead or for Health and Sciences, that those are fresh of mind for this committee in particular, especially since we have new members. We want to make sure we have an opportunity to review those again and then add any additional methods to our options for delivery methods. So I'd say that's going to be in the August, September timeframe. So we'll be sure to let you know when we need that on, or when we're going to ask for that to be on the agenda.
Great. Yeah, no, that'll be a great one during that time period.
Okay.
Any other proposed future agenda items? Seeing none, item E1, adjournment, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, all in favor, say aye. All opposed? Meeting adjourned at 5:45 p.m.
Thank you.
Insurance.